I don't want to set the world on fire. I just want to start a flame in your heart.
Hello everybody. Today I wanted to take a look at Thought Slime and his advice for us on how to handle a debate with fascists. Let's just jump into it, shall we?
Hi, I'm Slimy Sally, and I'm going to teach you a foolproof way to defeat fascists in any argument or any debate. The best part? You don't have to memorize a bunch of talking points. You don't even have to be a good public speaker. And even if you completely screw up, you cannot lose. Want to know the secret?
Is it stuff like how a totalitarian police state isn't sustainable and sooner or later you need to choose to expand or collapse, and that's assuming that the people don't try to rise up and dethrone you or whatever you want to call it. Or the fact that being a totalitarian, especially in a country like America, for instance, is such an unpopular opinion as to make you basically a social leper.
It's easy. Don't debate fascists. Ever.
Oh. So it's just basically more of this no platforming, deplatforming bullshit that we've heard so much from your side. Great. Are you trying to imply that the rebel media is fascist? Because that's not how conservatism works.
Now, I'm not saying be quiet, but you have nothing to gain and everything to lose from an actual debate or argument.
Why though? I can tell you why fascism is a pretty shitty and stupid idea really easily. The primary reason being that I believe, and most people agree, that human beings have inherent rights that we have no right to take away or squash, because to do so would be amoral. And if someone were to try and enact a totalitarian police state in this country, then it would be their death pretty much immediately, if not a few years down the road. Because no one likes being controlled by one person in particular, unless they're into some kind of BDSM dominatrix thing.
By giving them a platform, even to just expose their bigoted and hateful views, or to present a counter-narrative, you're legitimizing them.
Not really, though. It means, for me at least, that I respect the person giving the claims just enough to hear them out. Sometimes you have to show what someone is saying in order for others to understand what you're talking about. It's how you don't get strawmanned and accused of misaccusation. It's why I'm showing my audience everything that you're about to say, because I don't want to be accused of cherry picking, and to make the argument work in my favor, without it seeming like I'm being completely one-sided.
Even if you're appearing on their platform, you're still drawing people in who are there to see you. You're giving them access to your audience. Even if your audience is just your friends and family, that still helps them grow and spread their ideas.
This is assuming that my followers have an intellect that is easily swayed, and if I'm being honest, it kind of sounds like you're trying to say that people are so dumb or extremely childlike that they'll believe anything, which is kinda almost insulting. I mean, I follow that phrase from Men in Black that Tommy Lee Jones said about a person is smart, people is stupid, but even I have more faith in the common man and woman to not think fascism is a good idea, no matter how much flowery language is put around it. I don't think that by giving the next Mussolini a microphone in Ohio State, that suddenly my grandmother is going to be swayed to their line of thinking. I mean, could you say the same for someone like Sargon of Akkad, who has brought on Kevin Logan to Sargon's audience several times, but I don't see Kevin Logan's audience getting any bigger because of it. I mean, do you think that the whole of Sargon's fan base just suddenly starts screeching along with Kevin and parroting the same points he says? Or is Sargon merely showing the positions that Kevin holds so that he's not strawmanning him or accused of cherry picking?
The very act of debating something implies that there is some standard of evidence that would make that thing tolerable.
I mean, yeah, that's kind of how debate works, but that doesn't mean what you're debating against is morally neutral or something.
No such standard of evidence exists for the forcible removal and incumbent murder of minorities and other undesirables.
That's not the only thing fascists do. Genocide is obviously bad, but if your argument is just fascism is bad because genocide is bad, then you're missing the whole point of why fascism is so terrible. It's not just the fact that it has led to the death of millions of people in a short amount of time. It's the fact that it takes total control over your life, how you think, how you act, what food you eat, where your money goes. You are not a person anymore. You are just an asset to the state. The genocide is just a horrific side bonus to that, and it ultimately tells you that it's for the greater good of society.
To present this idea as even hypothetically considerable is monstrous. And if we're not willing to even consider an idea, we certainly shouldn't debate its legitimacy.
But what if I still want to understand the other side of things? Like for me, two of the worst things that I think you can argue for are more gun control policies or outright banning of the Second Amendment, or saying that abortions are okay up to the point where the baby is basically seconds away from being born. I think personally that these two positions are extremely abhorrent, but I'm still willing to give the benefit of the doubt to the person making these claims, so I can at least say, okay, here are the reasons why I think you're wrong. Or maybe they have something to say that I've never considered before. I won't agree with it, but at least it's something that I can take away from. Or for all I know, maybe they can tell me something I never thought of and I agree with them. Those neural pathways that lead to those thoughts cannot take place if I don't at least entertain that the other side might have something to say that I've never considered. It's how I don't become Steve Shives.
But, I mean, I get it. I understand why you might want to. Fascism, white nationalism, ethno-states. These are completely illogical ideas that fall apart under even the slightest scrutiny, and reveal themselves as the hateful fantasies of deranged toilet people that they actually are.
So why not debate them then? If it's so easy, then why shouldn't I debate against it? Don't I have like an almost ethical or moral obligation to debate against them if it's so easy?
You'd think it would be pretty easy to poke holes in these philosophies. And sure, you might not convince the person that you're debating, but you might convince people in the audience, right? Maybe. Maybe not. I mean, you have the truth on your side, but the truth isn't actually as convincing to the average person as a compelling fiction. That's why fascists lie. They always lie. They lie a lot. Lying is like their main thing.
Yes, they do, but because it's so easy to poke holes in their arguments, it doesn't matter how much they lie, because I and many other people are not willing to sacrifice our rights to give to one singular supreme commander.
If they were honest about what they wanted, they'd be run out of town on a rail.
Yes.
They'll never just straight up tell you that they advocate genocide. They'll say some horseshit like peaceful ethnic cleansing or pleasant displacement or loving concentration camps.
Again, genocide isn't the only thing bad that fascists do, but the fact that you have to force yourself to come up with benign terms to describe genocide means that people who genuinely believe these things cannot do it as easy, and it means they're fucked for options of trying to paint it with flowery language.
If they're pressed on the specifics of how any of their ideas are to be accomplished, they'll just kind of shrug and go, I don't know, white people are really smart and we'll figure it out.
Fascism isn't a race issue, it's equal opportunity. Next.
You can go ahead and give them all the good faith that you want. They're not going to return the favor. They like to lie. It suits them to lie. It helps them when they lie.
Yeah, because you can't make a good argument for fascism. Why are you saying we shouldn't debate these idiots again?
I'm going to read an excerpt from Sartre's Anti-Semite and Jew. Never believe that anti-Semites are completely unaware of the absurdity of their replies. They know that their remarks are frivolous, open to challenge, but they are amusing themselves. For it is their adversary who is obliged to use words responsibly, since he believes in words. The anti-Semites have the right to play. They even like to play with discourse, for, by giving ridiculous reasons, they discredit the seriousness of their interlocutors. They delight in acting in bad faith, since they seek not to persuade by sound argument, but to intimidate and disconcert. If you press them too closely, they will abruptly fall silent, loftily indicating by some phrase that the time for argument is past. Homeboy wrote that in 1944. Doesn't it feel a little prescient now that the Nazis have the handy excuse of, oh, I don't actually mean what I'm saying, I'm just being ironic. Weird how even though they don't believe anything they're saying for real, they seem to have a lot of bedfellows who definitely do believe it. Weird how they seem to have a lot of things in common. Weird. That's just weird.
Who is even saying this? And better yet, who is a Nazi? Because the Nazis don't exist anymore as an organization, like you're thinking. There's no Wehrmacht running around. You can say neo-Nazis, and that makes more sense, but I still have to ask what your definition of that is, because I don't think you're being completely honest about it.
Say anything, even if they know it's not true, if it suits their agenda.
And now you're repeating yourself. Okay.
The moment you think you have them trapped in some sort of rhetorical dead end, they'll just shrug it off and refuse to engage.
Which means that I have won the argument. I have gone down the line of their broken thought patterns and logic, and come out victorious. Cool. I am okay with this. I am fine with doing that if it gets them to shut up.
If it makes them look bad, they'll claim that we're joking. Or they'll just laugh at you. Or they'll threaten you.
They can threaten me all they want. I don't really care. I'm willing to fight for myself if I have to.
They will never ever concede, and they're willing to make things up whole cloth if it makes their arguments appear more substantial than they actually are. Having the truth on your side is only an asset if your opponent cares about the truth, and fascists don't. That's why they're fascists, because they believe wrong stuff, like fascism. And once again, you're probably thinking, oh, well, it won't change the fascist's mind, but it might change the mind of someone who's watching the argument or someone in the audience.
Yeah, because that's a documented thing that happens every day. People leave different ideas and philosophies all the time, and they also come to new ones. How many people leave the church and just as quickly go to it, for instance? Fascism is no different from these ideas. It is just one of many that people will be leaving and coming back from every day. The only difference is that fascism isn't as popular. The idea that there's a god, for instance, or the idea that there is no god, is infinitely more attractive than saying you should only have one ruler who dictates every aspect of your life.
And maybe, but keep in mind, your argument is presented on equal footing with a lie. No one in the audience has any reason to trust your credibility over your opponents. And if you're both calling each other liars, why should they believe you instead of them?
That's fine, because at the end of the day, it's not just about changing their mind. It's about showing the masses that their ideas aren't worth upholding and ultimately terrible. If you go into it with the goal of change your mind, then you have already failed before you've even started. You have to assume that you can't, but that your ideas are more attractive and more conducive to good living, and that people will naturally flow towards it. Fascism doesn't really have that benefit in its raw state. It's pretty honest about how you are just a statistic that the government can use to do whatever it needs to. Socialism and communism do have that benefit, because they have a lot of puffed up language that sounds like we can make a utopian state, besides the fact that it doesn't mention that the only way everyone's equal is that everyone is dead. I mean, at least fascism is honest in telling you it's probably going to kill you. Communism makes it sound like it's the best fucking thing on the planet.
Why should they believe you instead of them? It doesn't really matter what's true and what's not. If your opponent is able to insist their lies are the truth, they win. You don't get to do that, because you're trying to argue the truth. You can't just make up whatever sounds best and make that your argument. You have to stick to what's true. They don't.
That's not an argument.
And it's not hard to, lie really convincingly if you lack all shame. Have you noticed who the president is?
Hillary Clinton lied way more than Trump. Stop it.
Reality is boring sometimes. Fiction can be as salacious and engaging as you want. Reality is just a bunch of numbers and bar graphs. Fiction can have Spider-Man in it. In reality, immigrants have much lower crime rates than natural citizens, and that makes sense because if you risk everything to go to a place, you're not really going to jeopardize that by committing a crime and risking being taken away. But if I were to just make up some horseshit off the top of my head, like roving Muslim rape gangs are attacking white women and the decadent leftist media is covering it up, it scares the shit out of people. I'm not going to risk letting people like that into my neighborhood if I don't know whether or not it's true. And I might not necessarily believe it, but it's definitely going to stick in my head as something that people are talking about.
Yeah, but when you talk about that, are you talking about legal immigrants or illegal ones? Because most people talking about immigrant crime are talking about the illegal ones.
And sure, you can provide evidence that that claim is just made up, but what are the odds that your refutations are as memorable and engaging as the claim itself? What are people going to remember, the horrible made-up racist nonsense, or the dry statistics which suggest that nonsense might be a little bit misleading? Fascism is not smart, but fascists can be cunning. They know that people don't always respond to the best data. They respond to the most emotionally compelling story. They know how to manipulate people. They know how to make everyone afraid of the other. And maybe you can see through that. But are you sure that your audience is familiar with that type of argument? Are you sure that they know what fascists are doing? Because if you're not knee-deep in internet Nazis all day, like those of us that want to debate them, you might not. And you might think that their arguments are more convincing than they actually are.
Stupid people are going to stupid people. That is the way of the world. That is the way of the human race. But you cannot sit there with 100% certainty and say that no one will believe your evidence. If it is compelling enough, then there will be people who change their minds based on that and adjust their worldview. If it's so true that at some point you can pretty much broad stroke what you're getting across. I don't believe you should have to bring up statistics all the time to make your point. If you have to, it might just be a point meant only for scientists. You can make a really good emotional argument as to why you should not be a fascist. And thankfully, there's evidence to back it up. You saying this whole, what if your argument's not as good as them? It doesn't hold up because you can make a clear as day fucking argument against it. And the only people who won't believe it are Hitler.
Not to mention that while you're busy refuting one claim, your opponent can just say 10 more whack things and there's just shit all you can do about it.
Not really. I know I can go through all those claims and just lay waste to them. Because I can make better points as to why fascism is bad, and they can't do the same for being a constitutionally represented republic. But you have to really do some digging to get to that point, and even then, we already have first-hand accounts as to why fascism is so bad because we have examples of it existing within the last century. There are people who are still alive today who have experienced it. People always talk about Richard Spencer and how he's going to bring about a white ethno-state and genocide anyone not white, but in reality, in a country like America that is already a melting pot of different peoples and races and creeds, they will never go along with that. They'd sooner give him the Mussolini treatment.
Eventually, you're going to look like a paranoid loon if you say that they're lying about everything, even if they actually are.
If I look paranoid, it's because I come off as a crazy person. I will not come off as a crazy person.
So do not, under any circumstances, debate or argue with a fascist. Keep in mind, though, what I'm not saying is that means you should just be quiet. You can still dispute them, you just don't need their involvement or permission to do that. You can debunk, dispute, disparage someone without their presence, without them getting a word in edgewise. Is that fair? Well, no. We don't need to be fair to them. They're not going to be fair with us.
Okay there, Steve.
And maybe at this point you're saying, we need to be better than they are. We're already better than they are. We're not arguing that it's okay to exterminate human beings.
Good for you. You hate genocide. Do you want a cookie for that or something? Because no one's gonna tell you that you're a good person just because you're not for the illegal killing of millions of people. Here in the real world, we just call that normal, well-adjusted human behavior.
If you want to present a case against fascism, please do. We need lots of people doing that. What I'm saying is, don't give them the opportunity to rebut you. Don't give them the opportunity to present their messages the way they want to present them. It's not more moral to give them a platform than it is to deny them one. Quite the opposite, in fact. Every inch of ground they seize brings us one step closer to people being murdered.
Oh, fuck off. The masses aren't that susceptible to rhetoric of any kind.
And every inch that you argue with them about is one more inch they can seize. You're taking a huge gamble, and to what end? To hopefully convert a few of their followers? Why are the souls of their followers more important than the safety of their victims?
That's a risk you must take if you want to make people see them for who they are. Because they don't have victims like you're trying to say they do. They have had victims, but in current society, unless we're talking about somewhere like China or Venezuela, in Western society, they don't have victims. And if I can convince a few people from their side that their ideas are abhorrent and then come over to my side, then I make it that much easier and more likely that we can take the conversation out of the mainstream or out of the fringes even. Because I can show that no matter how terrible they are, there is another way. I've known a few people who were actual neo-Nazis. And you know what? Someone reached out to them. They changed their ways. They're a completely different person now, and they are no longer affiliated with that line of thinking or that group because someone reached out.
Fascism is an existential threat to Jewish people, LGBT people, people of color, neurodivergent or disabled people, and pretty much anyone else that gets in their way.
So, everyone, pretty much. Yeah, everyone. We get it.
And let me be clear, I don't mean if they get into power or control the government. I mean right now. I mean, like, right now. Them spreading their message is enough to inspire horrific violence. And it does. Routinely. We have to do everything in our power to stop that message dead in its tracks before it has a chance to hurt anyone. People like the British Skull or Arrow Boy do really good jobs at this, and neither requires the presence of or permission from a fascist to do so.
But it's still one-sided, which isn't useful.
In fact, their arguments actually work better because the fascists aren't invited to participate. They don't get to drown them out with a million lies. They don't get to control the messaging.
I bet there's lots of straw men there too.
If debating Nazis stopped Nazis, the Nazis wouldn't constantly demand to debate you. They want a debate because debate makes them look legitimate. It makes their ideas look like just another thing people are discussing. An idea that there are some pros for, some cons for.
Yeah, because they do. There are a lot of cons to Nazism, fascism, communism that warrant further discussion. If someone provides a pro for one of these things, you can provide several dozen cons because they are all bad.
If there's a debate, it means that their ideas merit further discussion and examination. It means that maybe there's something to what they're saying. Maybe we should talk about it and find out what that is. But what they're arguing against is people's fundamental humanity, and that can't ever be put up for debate. Full stop. Lastly, maybe you're going to tell me, well, I've debated Nazis, and I've gotten lots of messages from former Nazis thanking me for telling me the error of their ways. That's great. Truly. But how do you know your opponent isn't getting the same messages?
Oh my fucking god, man. It's a gamble, like you said. Sometimes you win arguments, sometimes you lose them. But you're only perpetuating it if you don't take that risk. And sorry, but more people are leaving fascism than coming to it. Okay, well, I think that's all for this video. Mr. Slime, Thought Slime, whatever you want to be called, I hope you see this in good faith, and I hope you have a good one. And to all of you out there, I am Mr. Sutherland. Have a good day.